Okay, let's jump right into this deep dive. We're tackling a really crucial topic today, one that impacts, well, pretty much everything. Cybersecurity threats and attacks.
It really does. And we're using the source material you've shared to really get into the weeds here.
Yeah, understanding the landscape of dangers, who's behind them, how they operate, and how newer technologies like cloud, mobile, and the Internet of Things fit into this whole picture.
That's the plan. Our mission here is to move beyond just the scary headlines. We want to pull out the really important nuggets from this material.
Give you the core concepts, the key insights you need without feeling totally overwhelmed by the jargon.
Exactly. Because understanding this stuff isn't just like an academic exercise.
No, definitely not. The source makes it really clear why it's so critical. We're talking fundamental protection of IT infrastructure, safeguarding data.
And ultimately keeping businesses running and maintaining trust. A successful cyber attack, as the source points out, isn't just about the money lost, though that can be huge.
Right, it can severely impact how an organization functions, how it works with customers, vendors, partners. The ripple effect is just enormous.
It really is. And when you look at what keeps executives and IT governance folks up at night, the source material kind of boils it down to three big concerns.
Okay, what are they?
First up, data breaches. This is, unauthorized access or use of sensitive information. We hear about these constantly.
Ransomware, phishing, all that.
Yeah, ransomware, phishing campaigns, malware, even just exploiting weak passwords to grab valuable data.
Okay, number one, data breaches. What's next?
Then you've got service disruptions. Basically, unplanned events that make systems or key applications unusable for too long. Think critical systems just going dark.
Right, like DDoS attacks, maybe,
Right.
or malware that just cripples things.
Exactly. The source links it to DDoS, certain types of malware, even SQL injection attacks that can take down database-driven apps. If your systems are down, your business grinds to a halt.
Makes sense. And the third one?
And the third big one is compliance risk. This is massive now. With all the data privacy rules worldwide, HIPAA, GDPR, PCI, DSS, ISO standards the source mentions.
Yeah, there are a lot.
Right. So failing to comply because of a security incident, that can lead to devastating fines, legal battles, on top of the direct attack costs.
So the pressure is immense. Organizations can't just react. They have to be proactive, constantly innovating their security.
Absolutely. Because the tech landscape is always shifting. Right. And the threats evolve right along with it. What worked last year might be useless today.
It's a constant arms race, essentially.
Pretty much. It's not a problem you solve once. It's continuous adaptation.
Okay, that sets the stage really well. Let's dig in now. First, maybe define what a cyber attack actually is, according to the source. And then, crucially, the who. Who's doing this stuff?
Right. So at its core, the source defines a cyber attack pretty broadly. It's any malicious activity targeting computer systems, infrastructure, networks, devices.
The key is malicious activity.
Exactly. The intent is negative. To collect info they shouldn't have, disrupt things, deny access, degrade performance, or just destroy data or resources.
And the source makes that point early on. The impact isn't just on the immediate target, is it?
No, not at all. It ripples out.
Mm-hmm.
Directly or indirectly affecting the organization, sure, but also their customers, their vendors, their partners. It's like throwing a stone in a pond, The effects spread wide.
Okay. And how do they actually do it? What are the methods?
Well, the source groups them into some high-level categories. You've got network-based attacks, host-based ones targeting specific machines, social engineering targeting people.
Application-based physical attacks, right?
Okay.
And supply chain.
Exactly. We'll definitely unpack all of those specific techniques. But first, let's talk about the who. The force calls them threat agents.
Threat agents, okay.
These are the individuals or groups, internal or external, who could negatively impact security through theft, manipulation, unauthorized control.
And they're always motivated by something.
Always. Usually a specific goal. Financial gain is common, obviously, but it could also be data destruction, spying, making a political statement, getting a competitive edge, or sometimes just the thrill of it.
And the source breaks down different types of these agents.
Yeah, it does. Understanding their typical motives helps figure out who they might target and how. First, there's the broad term: attacker, threat actor, or hacker.
That covers a lot of ground.
It really does. From lone individuals messing around maybe to highly organized groups, hacking rings, or what they call advanced persistent threats, APTs.
APTs, those sound serious. Persistent means they stick around.
Exactly. They're not just hit and run. They aim to maintain a long-term presence inside a network to achieve really sophisticated objectives. They're patient.
And what kind of objectives does this broad attacker category have?
Oh, it's incredibly varied. Stealing money, sure. But also intellectual property, destabilizing businesses, spying for governments or others, spreading information true or false, propaganda even. Just a huge range.
Yeah, okay, then there's a more specific type.
Yes, the adversary. The source defines these as actors whose core interests directly conflict with the target organization. They're really motivated to cause harm or gain an advantage.
Like a business competitor.
Could be. This conflict fuels specific actions, intercepting purchase orders, stealing competitive data, maybe even physically tampering with hardware before it's installed.
Wow. Physical tampering, too.
Yeah. And social engineering is a big tool for adversaries trying to compromise people inside a rival company.
Okay, moving up a level, the source talks about government-sponsored or state-sponsored actors.
These are major players, funded, directed, or sponsored by nations. They're often behind the biggest, most sophisticated global attacks.
And their goals are usually tied to national interests.
Typically, yes. Stealing intellectual property to boost their own country's industries, grabbing sensitive government or military secrets for espionage, sometimes even hitting financial systems to fund state activities or destabilize rivals. They have serious resources and skills.
Then you have hacktivists, using hacking for activism.
Exactly. Groups using hacking techniques to promote social causes or political agendas. They might target organizations they see as unethical or opposed to their views.
The source mentions something interesting about them, like some have their own rules.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Some groups apparently try to avoid targets like hospitals or churches, places they feel hitting would undermine their moral stance, which is quite different from purely criminal or state actors.
Okay. Now, what about threats from inside?
A huge concern. Insiders, employees, former employees, contractors, anyone with authorized access. Their malicious intent might develop over time. Maybe they get disgruntled, have money problems.
Or they could have been planted there from the start.
That too. They might have infiltrated the organization deliberately. Insiders are tough because they're already inside the defenses. They have legitimate access, know the systems.
But they don't need to break in, technically.
Right, which makes them potentially very damaging, even if they aren't the most technically skilled attacker.
And the last category was just external threats.
Yep, pretty straightforward. Just means any threat originating from outside the target. Seems basic, but it's important to distinguish that from the insider risk.
Okay, so understanding the who gives us clues about motive and capability. But now, yeah, let's get into the how. How do these different agents actually carry out attacks using those methods we listed? Let's unpack the attack types.
Absolutely. Let's dive into the specifics, starting with network-based attacks. These target the actual network infrastructure, switches, routers, servers, cables, the connections themselves.
Right, the plumbing of the internet, so to speak. What's first?
The source starts with backdoors and trapdoors. These aren't exactly attacks themselves, but ways to bypass normal security. Hidden entry points?
Like a secret entrance.
Kind of. A trapdoor might be put in deliberately by a developer for quick access during testing. A backdoor could be malicious, left by a bad actor, or even just an accidental flaw. They're critical because they let attackers in easily, skipping authentication.
Okay, so they open the door for other attacks. What about covert channels? That sounds sneaky.
It is. Very sneaky and hard to spot. It's transmitting data using methods not intended for communication. Exploiting legitimate system resources in weird ways.
How does that work?
Two main types mentioned. Storage channels, where you modify a shared storage location, like tweaking a file setting slightly that another process can read, encoding data that way. And timing channels, where you encode data in tiny variations in the timing of legitimate actions, like network packet delays. Milliseconds of difference can carry information.
Wow, that sounds incredibly hard to detect.
It really is, hidden in the noise. Next up, a classic, buffer overflows.
Heard of those? It's like overloading something.
Exactly. Imagine a program has a small memory space, a buffer, for, say, 20 characters of input. If an attacker sends 100 characters, the extra data overflows.
And spills into places it shouldn't.
Right into adjacent memory. If that memory holds crucial instructions or data, the overflow overwrites it. A skilled attacker can use this to inject their own code or crash the system, potentially taking control. Still happens a lot, especially in languages like C or C++.
Okay, then there's denial of service.
Yep.
Making things unavailable.
Yep. The goal is to flood a single target system with so much traffic or so many requests that it just gets overwhelmed. It uses up all its bandwidth or processing power and can't respond to legitimate users anymore. Shuts it down, effectively.
In distributed denial of service, DDoS, is just a bigger version of that.
Much bigger. Same idea, overwhelm the target, but using many attacking computers, often compromised machines in a botnet, all hitting the target at once.
So it's way more powerful and harder to stop.
Exactly. The traffic comes from everywhere, making it hard to block. DDoS can bring down major services.
Right. What about man in the middle, MITM?
This is where an attacker secretly positions themselves between two parties who think they're talking directly, like someone intercepting your mail.
So they can eavesdrop or even change the messages.
Both. They can just listen in, read sensitive data, or actively alter the communication before passing it along. Requires controlling a point on the network path between the victims.
Okay. And port scanning. That sounds like reconnaissance.
It often is. Networks use logical ports for different services. Port 80 for web, 22 for SSH, etc. A port scan just checks which of these ports are open and listening on a target system.
But open ports are normal, right? You need them for services to work.
Totally normal. The vulnerability, as the source explains, isn't the open port itself, but a misconfigured service running on that port. Maybe it's outdated and vulnerable, has weak default passwords, or the firewall isn't blocking unauthorized access correctly. That's the weak point scanners look for. Got it. Ransomware, we hear about this all the time.
Yeah, it's become a huge problem. Typically malware that encrypts your files or locks your systems entirely. Then the attacker demands a ransom, usually in crypto, to unlock it. The main impact is you lose access to your own stuff.
Nasty. What about reverse shell attacks? How are they different?
This is clever. Firewalls usually block incoming connections from outside. With a reverse shell, the attacker first compromises a machine inside your network. Then they make that machine initiate an outbound connection back to the attacker's server.
And outbound connections are often allowed. Often, yeah. So the connection goes through, and the attacker uses it to remotely control the internal machine. They bypass the firewall because the victim called them first, so to speak.
Sneaky, okay. Replay attacks. Replaying data.
Yep, a type of MITM. The attacker eavesdrops and captures a legitimate secure communication, maybe a login sequence. Later, they just replay that captured data sequence back to the server.
Even if it was encrypted.
Sometimes they don't even need to decrypt it. If they captured the right sequence, the server might just accept the replayed session or token as valid, granting access or repeating an action.
Wow. Okay, return-oriented attacks, or ROP. These sound complex.
They are highly sophisticated. They bypass defenses that block running new malicious code. Instead, ROP attackers find tiny pieces of existing, legitimate code called gadgets already on the system.
Little snippets of trusted code.
Exactly. Each gadget usually ends with a return instruction. The attacker carefully crafts a chain of addresses pointing to these gadgets. By manipulating the program's execution flow, they make it jump from one gadget to the next, executing them in sequence.
So they build malicious actions out of legitimate building blocks.
Precisely. String enough gadgets together and you can perform complex attacks using code the system already trusts. Very hard to detect.
Okay, last one in the network category, spoofing. Faking identities.
Yep, impersonating someone or something else to gain access or deceive, falsifying data to look legit.
What kinds are there?
Source lists a few. Address resolution spoofing, ARS, often ARP spoofing. Faking the link between a device's physical MS address and its IP address on a local network. Tricks devices into sending traffic through the attacker. DNS spoofing attacks the domain name system, the internet's phone book, manipulates it so when you type a real web address, like www.mycompany.com, you can send to a fake site instead, maybe to steal your login.
Even if you type the right address?
Even then, the DNS lookup itself gets hijacked, and hyperlink spoofing is simpler, just making the text of a link look safe, like click here for support, while the actual underlying URL points somewhere malicious.
Wow, okay, that's a lot just on the network side. Let's shift to application-based attacks, targeting software itself.
Exactly. Vulnerabilities in desktop software, web apps, databases, aiming for access or disruption within that software.
Like SQL injection. That sounds familiar.
A classic, still very common. Web apps talk to databases using SQL. If a website input field, like a login box or search bar, doesn't properly check what you type in, an attacker can inject malicious SQL commands.
And the database runs those commands.
If the web server just passes along, yep. The injected code executes on the database. The source graphic shows how this can let attackers bypass logins, steal, change, or delete sensitive data, usernames, passwords, credit card numbers, bank details, whatever is in that database.
Okay. What about cross-site scripting, XSS? How's that different?
XSS also involves injecting code into a website, usually JavaScript. But the key difference is the malicious script executes in the browser of another user who visits the compromised page.
So it attacks the user, not the server directly.
Right. The script runs on their machine. It can steal their session cookies, grab data they see on the page, perform actions as them on that site, or redirect them elsewhere. It targets the user's interaction with the vulnerable site.
Okay. Race condition. What's that about?
This exploits applications that depend on things happening in a specific sequence. If an attacker can force operations to happen out of order, or at the exact same time a race, they might exploit a tiny window where the system is vulnerable.
Leading to what?
Maybe unauthorized access, or executing a transaction twice. Things that shouldn't happen if the steps occurred in the right order. It's about messing with the timing.
Right, and the source mentioned mobile code, basically describing viruses.
Yeah, use that term for programs designed to move and infect other applications,
Yeah.
viruses, and it broke them down by type. An overwrite virus just deletes or writes over the original file's content. You lose the data.
A multipartite virus. Sounds complicated.
It is, uses multiple infection methods, maybe hits executable files, and the hard drive's boot sector, harder to clean up completely.
Parasitic virus.
Attaches to a legit app. When you run the app, the virus runs too, with the same permissions, hiding its actions.
Polymorphic virus changes its appearance.
Exactly. Mutates its code structure with each infection to try and evade antivirus signatures. Keeps the malicious part, but looks different each time.
And resident virus.
Installs itself into the computer's memory,
Mm-hmm.
RAM, and stays active even after the original program closes. Can infect other things or interfere with the system while it's running.
Okay, lots of virus types. Let's move to host-based attacks, targeting one specific machine.
Yep, a single laptop, phone, server, disrupting or getting access just to that device.
Like a brute force attack for passwords.
The most direct approach. Automated software just tries every possible password combination. Simple letters first, then common words, then complex patterns, until it guesses right. Very effective against weak passwords.
Keystroke logging, recording what you type.
Exactly. Secretly tracks every key press, often delivered by Trojans or other malware. The goal is to capture logins, passwords, credit card numbers, anything sensitive you type.
And malware itself is a big category here.
Huge. The source defines it as any software or firmware designed to cause unauthorized, harmful processes impacting confidentiality, integrity, or availability. It's the umbrella for viruses, worms, Trojans, adware, spyware, all that bad software.
And rogue mobile apps, specifically for phones and tablets.
Right. Apps that look legit games, utilities, but have hidden malicious code. Downloaded often from unofficial places. Once installed, they can steal info, grant access to your mic or camera, install more malware, all without you knowing.
Okay, let's switch gears completely. Away from tech flaws towards human flaws. Social engineering attacks.
The art of manipulation. Exploiting psychology, not code. Using deception via email, text, phone calls to trick people into giving up info, access, or performing actions. Building trust under false pretenses is key.
Phishing is the most common, right? Fake emails.
Yeah, absolutely. Emails that look like they're from your bank, a service you use, maybe a colleague, asking for info or sending you to a fake login page that looks real. The disguise is crucial.
And spear phishing is just more targeted.
Exactly. Phishing is wide. Spear phishing targets specific individuals or roles within a company. Attackers do their homework, make the email look like it's from IT, HR, a boss, aiming for corporate secrets or credentials. Much higher success rate, usually.
Then there's business email compromise, BEC, or whaling, going after the big fish.
Yep. Targeting executives, C-suite, finance people, impersonating the CEO or CFO, sending urgent emails asking for wire transfers to fake accounts, paying bogus invoices, or sending sensitive data like employee tax forms to a fake lawyer. Extremely damaging financially.
Pretexting, creating a fake story.
Right. Inventing a scenario, a pretext, often with urgency to justify asking for sensitive info or access.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm from IT support. We see an urgent issue. I need your password to fix it. Building a believable lie.
Catfishing, that's the one with fake online relationships.
Yeah. Creating a fake persona online, usually on dating sites or social media, to lure someone into a relationship. Then, once trust is built, they manipulate the victim into sending money or gifts using sob stories.
Farming, how's that different from phishing?
Farming redirects you to a fake site without you necessarily clicking a bad link. It might infect your computer to change how it looks up websites, or attack the DNS servers themselves. So you type the correct web address, but still end up on the attacker's fake site. Often works with phishing.
And vishing? Phishing over the phone?
Pretty much. Using voice calls, often VoIP, might spoof caller ID to look legit. Could be automated messages asking you to key in info, or a live person using pretexting.
Okay, now for something that feels a bit old school but still relevant, physical on-premises attacks, actually being there,
Yep, breaches involving physical access to the building, hardware, or data storage.
like intercepting discarded equipment, dumpster diving for hard drives.
Surprisingly effective. Companies throw out old gear without wiping it properly. Attackers can find treasure troves of sensitive data in the trash or from recyclers.
Piggybacking or tailgating, sneaking in behind someone.
Simple but works. Following an authorized person through a secure door without using your own badge gets you inside where you shouldn't be.
And the source says on-premises infrastructure is targeted sometimes because physical security is weak.
Yeah, paradoxically,
Yeah.
a company might spend millions on firewalls but leave the server room door unlocked or unwatched. Physical access bypasses a lot of digital defenses.
Tampering.
Yeah.
Physically messing with equipment.
Right. Getting hands-on with servers, network gear, workstations, plugging in rogue devices like keyloggers, rewiring things, modifying hardware or firmware needs physical presence.
And the most basic, theft. Just stealing the hardware.
Yep. Grabbing laptops, drives, servers, backup tapes. If they walk out the door with a device holding the data, most digital security is irrelevant at that point.
Okay, our final attack category, supply chain attacks.
Yeah.
Going after the partners and vendors.
Exactly. Exploiting the trust and interconnections in the business supply chain to ultimately hit the main target.
Like embedded software code. Malware baked into products.
Yes. Compromising a vendor and slipping malicious code or a backdoor into their legitimate software update, firmware, or hardware component before it ships to the target. The target installs it, trusting the source, and gets infected. SolarWinds was a huge example.
The source also mentioned foreign-sourced attacks, governments influencing manufacturers.
A concern, yes. The idea that governments in some countries might compel tech companies under their control to build surveillance capabilities or backdoors into products sold internationally.
And pre-installed malware on hardware, like on USB drives?
It could be. Malware loaded onto devices, USBs, cameras, phones, before they even reach the supply chain partner or target company.
Yeah.
Plug it in, and the malware executes.
Direct vendor attacks, hitting a supplier to hurt the main company.
Yep. Attack a key vendor to disrupt the target's operations, production, or just use the vendor's compromised systems as a launch pad into the target's network.
And watering hole attacks in this context.
Attackers identify third-party websites, frequently used by employees of their target company or industry site. Maybe a supplier portal, industry news site, regulator site. They compromise that site, the watering hole. When employees from the target visit the trusted site, it delivers malware to them.
Man, looking at that list, the attack surface is just huge. And you mentioned the ripple effect earlier. It really shows how connected everything is.
Absolutely. The source hammers this home. An attack on one company doesn't happen in a vacuum. It hits their customers, vendors, partners, tangible consequences down the line.
Let's use those examples from the source. A ransomware attack hits company A. What happens to others?
Well, their customer might not be able to get products or services because company A's systems are locked.
Their vendor might not be able to send invoices or receive orders electronically because company A is offline. Disrupts the vendor's cash flow.
And their partner, maybe sharing systems or projects, faces delays, has to divert resources to help, maybe even shares financial losses if joint operations are crippled.
Okay, or mobile code malware that spreads and deletes data. If it hits company A,
Their customer systems could get infected too, maybe through a shared portal.
the vendor could get infected via email or file sharing, losing their own data.
And the partner might have to drop everything, pull staff off other projects to help company A recover, costing them time and money.
Last example. Malware causing a data breach at company A.
The customer's sensitive data held by company A is now exposed.
The vendor's financial details shared with company A might be stolen.
And the partner faces reputational damage by association, plus potential legal trouble like lawsuits from affected customers whose data got leaked via company A.
It really drives home that cybersecurity isn't just one company's problem, it's an ecosystem issue.
Totally. So we know who attacks and the incredible variety of how they attack. What about the typical sequence? Is there a common playbook attackers follow?
That's a great question. The source does outline common stages, a framework that holds true for many different kinds of intrusions, useful for defense planning.
Definitely. The first stage is reconnaissance, info gathering, casing the joint digitally.
Learning about the target systems, network, security, employees, looking for weaknesses.
Exactly. Finding open ports, outdated software, public info for social engineering, building a profile before they make a move.
Stage 2, gaining access. The actual break-in.
Using the info from recon, exploiting a vulnerability, cracking a password, using a phishing link, maybe a physical backdoor, just getting that initial foothold inside.
Once inside, they want more power. Escalation of privileges.
Usually, yeah. They might get in as a regular user, but they want admin rights. So they try to crack admin passwords, exploit flaws that let them elevate their privileges, find misconfigurations, get more control.
Then maintaining access, sticking around.
Do you want persistence? Install backdoors, create hidden accounts, plant malware that lets them reconnect later even if the initial entry point is fixed. They don't want to get kicked out easily.
Stage 5, network exploitation and exfiltration, the main event.
This is where they do what they came for. Steal the data, encrypt titles for a ransom, disrupt operations, delete things, carry out the actual malicious goal.
And finally, covering tracks, cleaning up the mess.
Especially for stealthy attackers. Disabling logs, clearing logs, modifying files to hide their actions, removing their tools, making it hard to detect them or figure out what happened later.
Understanding those stages gives defenders a roadmap too, right? Places to put up roadblocks.
Exactly. Layered defenses matching the attack lifecycle.
Okay, now let's talk about the specific risks with some major modern technologies. Cloud, mobile, and IoT, they've changed everything.
You really have. Let's start with cloud computing. Storing, processing data and apps online, managed by providers like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud.
Now, the source makes a surprising point here. Cloud providers are often seen as more secure than traditional data centers.
It sounds counterintuitive, but yeah. They have huge gadgets, top experts, rigorous patching, strong physical security, compliance certifications like SOC 2, often better than what individual companies can manage themselves.
But UT moving to the cloud still introduces unique risks, like additional industry exposure.
Right, you're sharing infrastructure. An attack targeting another company or industry on the same cloud platform could potentially spill over or affect you indirectly.
Cloud malware injection.
Yeah.
Attacking your specific space in the cloud.
Yeah. Even if the provider's infrastructure is secure, an attacker might get into your cloud account, maybe stolen credentials, and inject malware into your instances or data storage there.
Compliance violations are still possible.
Sure, the provider might meet general standards like IPA or GDPR, but maybe not your very specific industry regulation or internal policy perfectly. Gaps can exist.
And you definitely experience a loss of control, right? You don't own the hardware.
Big one. You rely on the provider for patching, upgrades, security changes, less direct control over the timing and specifics.
Loss of data is still a risk, despite their security.
Less likely, perhaps, but yes. Providers can still suffer major breaches or outages affecting many customers. It's not zero risk.
Loss of visibility, too. You don't see everything the provider sees.
Right. They have the full picture of the infrastructure. You only see your slice. You might not know all the underlying risks in the shared environment.
Managing multi-cloud or hybrid setups adds complexity.
Definitely. Trying to secure and monitor across different cloud platforms and your own on-prem systems is tough. Easy to create blind spots.
And theft of intellectual property if the provider's controls aren't good enough.
A risk, yeah. Your sensitive IP is sitting on their systems. You're trusting their controls to protect it.
Okay, let's shift to mobile technologies. Phones, tablets, wearables, everywhere now.
And deeply integrated into work. But their mobility and diversity create unique risks. They face similar threats to PCs, but also specific issues.
Like different OS updates constantly connecting to public Wi-Fi.
Exactly. Less controlled environments than desktops. Need good software and strong usage policies.
What are the specific mobile risks the source highlights?
Application malware is huge. Rogue apps, stealing data, or granting access. Lack of updates, users just don't patch phones often enough, leaving them vulnerable.
Lack of encryption, data easily readable if the phone's accessed.
Often, yeah. Passcodes help, but if email is compromised, they can often be reset. Unencrypted data is then wide open. Physical threats, loss, or theft is obvious, but devastating if security is weak.
Unsecured Wi-Fi, connecting to public hotspots.
Major risk. Easy for others on the network to snoop on your traffic or attack your device. And location tracking malware or tools tracking your GPS can be used for physical attacks or stalking.
The source also mentioned risks from physical storage like USBs and surveillance tools like cell site simulators intercepting calls.
Yes, those two. Mobile introduces physical and proximity risks as well.
Finally, the Internet of Things, IoT. Smart devices everywhere.
Cameras, sensors, appliances, wearables, connecting everything.
Yeah.
Super convenient, but often rushed to market with poor security.
Like device mismanagement, weak passwords.
Very common. Default or easily guessable passwords make them easy targets. Leads to info loss or network entry. Device spoofing is another attacker fakes an IoT device on your network to gain trust.
And IoT devices used in escalated cyber attacks, like botnets.
Yeah, they're easily compromised in huge numbers to launch DDoS attacks, like Mirai. Or, crucially, used as an entry point into the main corporate network if they're connected.
Which creates an expanded footprint. More devices Oakley's uses, more attack surface.
Exactly. Information theft is also a risk. These devices collect data, often stored insecurely. Outdated firmware is a massive problem. People just don't update IoT device firmware, leaving known holes open.
And firmware updates can be missed by IT if employees bring their own devices.
Right. Malware, including ransomware, targets IoT too. And basic network attacks like DOS can easily overwhelm their limited processing power.
Okay, wow. We've covered a massive amount of ground. The actors, the methods across network, application, host, social, physical, supply chain,
Yeah.
the attack stages, the specific risks of cloud, mobile, IoT. It's overwhelming. How can anyone possibly defend against all this?
It is overwhelming. And that's where proactive strategies like threat modeling come in, which the source discusses. It's about systematically identifying, analyzing, and mitigating threats before they hit.
Thinking like an attacker to find your own weaknesses.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Understanding your risks so you can prioritize defenses and countermeasures to minimize impact or prevent attacks altogether.
And it starts with understanding your threat landscape, all the potential threats relevant to you.
Right. And that landscape is always changing, so it needs regular assessment. You look at potential attack vectors, the likely impact, your known vulnerabilities, the types of threats, everything we've discussed.
The source outlined typical phases for threat modeling.
Yeah, structured process. First, identify assets, know what you need to protect. Data, systems, processes.
Then identify threats relevant to those assets, realistic scenarios.
Then perform reduction analysis, break down the system, map data flows, trust boundaries, how threats could interact.
Analyze the impact, what happens if an attack succeeds. Quantify it financially, reputationally. Helps prioritize.
Develop countermeasures and controls based on that analysis. Firewalls, training, incident plans. Prioritize by risk.
And finally, review and evaluate regularly because things change.
Exactly. It's a continuous cycle.
The source also mentions specific threat methodologies. PASTA, VAST, STRIDE.
Right. Frameworks to guide the process. PASTA is risk-centric, attacker-focused. Considers asset value heavily. 7 stages. VAST is designed for agile development, aims to be scalable and visual.
And STRIDE from Microsoft.
Yep. Uses 6 categories. Spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, elevation of privilege. You analyze components against each of these threat types. Helps identify needed controls based on core security properties.
Different tools for the same goal. Proactive risk management.
Precisely. Choose the approach that fits, but the core idea is to anticipate and prepare.
So to wrap up this deep dive, we've gone from defining risks and attackers to detailing countless attack methods, the ripple effects, the attack lifecycle, the challenges of new tech, and finally proactive defense through threat modeling. It's a lot.
It really is.
Yeah.
The takeaway has to be that the cyber threat landscape is not only vast, but constantly rapidly evolving. And that interconnectedness means security is truly a shared responsibility. One weak link affects everyone.
Absolutely. Understanding these fundamentals, the concepts and mechanisms from the source material, is just crucial for anyone trying to navigate or secure anything in the digital world today, personal or professional.
And it leads to that final question, really. Given how diverse and fast-moving these threats are, how can anyone realistically hope to stay completely ahead? Is perfect prevention even possible anymore? Or is successful defense becoming more about resilience, being really good at detecting attacks quickly, responding effectively, and managing the inevitable impacts when things do get through?
Something to definitely think about. A challenging thought to end on after exploring this complex landscape.